All right, welcome back everybody to my brickbreaker project for grade 12 computers. I think where we left off last time was that um, we were making our own objects, called them structures. You can also call them classes. And we made one for the ball that borrowed all of the Box2D stuff to create a circle. But we also gave it all the properties of an SFML circle shape, and we did it all in our own little data structure. And so now that ball is happily bouncing around because we gave it a initial velocity and an angle that we pointed it to. That was all done in this constructor function here, which essentially takes all the Box2D code and creates a B2 body variable. We called it body. It has this star here because Box2D deals with the memory addresses of its variables as opposed to just the variables itself. And I'm sure we've seen that a little bit here and there. And we also gave it, so these are our member variables, I guess we'll say. And they belong to our ball class or ball structure. And we'll put all our member functions here. And right now we only have one. It is called update position. And what it does is, if you remember, the this keyword implies that I want to set the position. If I call update function, which I do right here, or update position rather, if I call main ball.update position, update position goes in and sees that it's the word this means actually update main ball, like the actual structure that you're calling update position on. That's what the word this means. So we're setting the position to the Box2D's position that we get from our physics world, and we're setting its rotation. Not super important for the ball because we can't really see it spin. And then we render it to the screen. So we have to pass it a render window. So that's where we were for the last time. I think what we'll do now is create a paddle class. And we're going to end up adding some more functionality to our ball as well. Update position is good, but there's other things we may want to do. We certainly want to know when it's colliding, so we could have some check collision functions and all that stuff too. So, but what we'll do for now is we will create a new file, empty file. Yes, I'd like to add it to my project. I will call it paddle, like that, .cpp. Okay. I'm going to take, obviously I need include physics.h in my paddle. Remember, this file right now doesn't know anything about anything in my program, really. Okay. I'm going to make a structure. I'm going to call it paddle. It gives me my, it makes my brackets with a semicolon on it, so that's good. What else am I going to need to know? Or what else am I going to need to do? I'm going to have to make some member variables. Oops. Member variables like that. So I tab that one over. And I guess for now, I'm only going to use B2 body star. And, you know, I don't really need a speed necessarily for my paddle or an angle. It's just going to move left and right for now along the bottom of the screen. I will, however, need this constructor function. And so when I create a paddle here, let's see. The other thing I'll need to do, first of all, is make it steal all of the properties of a rectangle shape, right? So it'll let me do it like that with the colon. and you have to put this word public for some reason. I can't remember why you have to do that, but you do. And so if I save that, and I don't know if I need to save it. I don't think I do. I think it automatically saves it when you run it, but there I'm going to add paddle.cpp, and let's see what it does. Does it complain? No errors. That's good news. Can I make a paddle? Let's try it. Paddle. I'll call it main paddle. We may want to, add more paddles later on. I could do empty brackets for now, or I can put no brackets at all, and it runs. But I do want to get it to the point where I have to pass it a world and its size and all the stuff you would normally pass to a Box2D rectangle that we make. So let's open this physics file and have a look at how we create a box. So what I want to do is I want to take all of the stuff from my create box function in the physics.h file, copy, and I want that to be on the inputs of my constructor, like that. Okay. And so now when I go to call my paddle function, I can't give it no empty brackets or nothing. It actually, when I put a bracket there, it updates and says I need a world, I need a position. So I'm going to just put this kind of in the middle of the screen, 400 kind of low down at the bottom of the screen, a width of maybe 80 pixels, a height of 20 pixels, and a body type of, now I'm actually going to leave that blank, but I'm going to go to my paddle here, and instead of doing a dynamic body by default, I'll do a kinematic body, because a paddle is a great usage of the kinematic body, which, if you remember, acts like a moving platform in Box2D. So do it that way. Run it. And there you go. Doesn't do anything yet because I don't have any code in there. So I'm going to go to the create box code. I'm going to copy it all. I don't need a return in there, so I'll copy all that. I don't need that set user data stuff either. But I'm going to copy all of this, go to my paddle code, and paste it in my constructor like that. This should be good. This should be good. That's fine. Linear damping is 0, sure. B2 shape, fixture, density, all of that stuff is fine. Except here, I don't use the word res anymore. I just use the word body like that. And here I don't use res, I use body. I'm just using my member variable. Here I don't need to create a rectangle shape and then set its and set its width or anything. What I have to actually do is go this dot set size like that, and then I pass it the height and the width, and instead of using shape here, I say this, which means, if for us in our case, it'll mean main paddle, because that's the name of our paddle structure. So when I create a main paddle, it'll go in, and because it says that a paddle can take on all the attributes of a rectangle shape, I should have to set the size, the origin. I do want the origin to be in the middle of the paddle, because that's how Box2D deals with it. And if I have my origin in SFML at the top left corner and my origin in Box2D in the middle of the box, then I'm going to have some issues when I go to move it around the screen. It's going to be offset all the time. So I'll do all these little thises like that. And I'm going to take, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this as well. This entire update position function. It will work perfectly well with my paddle as it would with the circle or the ball. Okay, it's just going to set the position based on what information it gets about the position in the physics world, and it's going to get the rotation as well. great. So I'll call these my member variables. And what I need to do for it to draw, it won't draw yet. Bouncy bounce, there we go. What I'm going to need for it to draw is just to simply write in here. Notice how my while loop actually has very little code in it. That's kind of the goal when you're creating your own structures and your own classes or whatever. It's to kind of get all the code into separate files, which then, if something screws up in your paddle, then the code is nicely confined in here and you can go in and fix it without having to worry about tons of code in your main loop and try to find out what's wrong. Okay. It's kind of a way to compartmentalize your code. There it is. That paddle's a little short. I would say the ball is a little bit too big as well. So I'm going to shrink that ball. I believe this is the radius of the ball when you set it. I'm going to make that 10 pixels. And I'm going to make my paddle a little wider than 80. How about 150 or something? So there you go. That looks a lot better for me. Let's see if it'll hit this paddle. One thing I don't have in my code is moving that paddle, right? Let's see. We could add that into our update position function if we wanted, or we could make a new function. Let's see if it hits this thing first. We're going to get lucky. Is it eventually going to run into it? Probably here. Bounce. Yeah, it hit it. Let's go to our paddle, and in this update position, we can move that thing in the physics world. So we could say something like if. Now, I don't have the SF namespace here, which is why I had to write SF::. I think I'm just gonna using namespace SF just for now. A lot of people don't like those namespaces, the using namespace thing, but I think it's a nice shortcut for us for what we're doing. So I'm going to say if the keyboard is pressed. Now keep in mind this is going to get called once every frame, so 60 times a second. So it's, even though it's going to update the position and the rotation from the physics world, you can also put other things in here that need to get checked every frame. So I'll just say keyboard is key pressed. Is that the name? Yes. And then keyboard : A is fine for the left. What I'll do is I will move this paddle. So there's a couple ways to do that. I can't just move the SFML shape. It would be nice if I went this dot move. Watch. Right? And let's say I move it 5 pixels to the left and 0 pixels up and down. The problem is this will move my shape, but it won't move the actual box in the physics world. So the shape will be like moving all around, but the ball will only hit the actual box. You'll see, hopefully. Oh, it doesn't even do anything because of my update position. So it does try to move the shape, but then it moves it right back to the physics world. So I don't actually want to move my SFML thing at all. I want this to keep track of how my SFML gets moved around the screen. The set position, set rotation. It just takes all the info from the world, the Box2D world, puts it on, and then updates its SFML position. So I need to find a way to move my body. I just go body, and I have to use an arrow instead of a dot. If I use a dot, it shows me all the functions, but it'll complain because it's a memory address. So I actually should use an arrow, and then I can do a bunch of things. I could, because it's a kinematic body, like I don't really want to set its position. Remember, setting positions can be dangerous in Box2D because it's an unphysical thing to just like teleport the shape, right? By setting someone's position instantly, you're basically teleporting it. So maybe what I want to do is just for now set its linear velocity. It's going to be tough to get this thing to move very naturally because you have to give it energy, right? You could give it a force. I'm going to set its linear velocity here. I could borrow that code as well from physics.h. There is a set velocity function. You'll see it here. We could even use move body, but I'm going to just set its velocity. So set linear velocity, and then it just takes a b2 vec2. I'm just going to grab all this code here under set linear velocity, hit copy, go to my paddle, hit paste. So that should be fine. This should say the word body, not B, because we're trying to adjust the actual physics body of our structure, data structure. And we don't have a velocity.x like we did when we used this function. You actually passed it a 2D vector of velocity. Here I'll just say -5, which is what I wanted to move it originally anyways. So, and here I'll say 0. So I actually don't even need to divide by pixels per meter, but I will. And this hopefully will move our paddle to the left. It's very slow, -5 pixels. 5 pixels a second. Is that what it's trying to do? Oh, it's way too slow for us, so let's try 50. The problem is it glides along, and it always sets it to 50. Even 50 is way too slow for us. Maybe we don't divide by pixels per meter. Or, I guess it doesn't really matter for us. It's just some arbitrary number anyways. So 500 will be too fast. Let's try 50. Way too fast. So let's try our old 5 again. Maybe that'll move at 5 pixels a second. That looks about right. Okay. I will just copy this. I will say if it is the letter D, then make this +5. And there it glides nicely. I mean, one thing I could do is write else here, right? So if it's A, move it left. If it's D, move it right. And I could write an else here, like that. And I could set the body's linear velocity to 0 completely. So it's more natural that it if I let go of one of the buttons, it stops. Still a little bit slow, so maybe I'll say like 8. Oopsie. So the brick class will be quite similar to the paddle class, except, and I'll take that up in the next few days with you guys. One thing I want to add to this paddle is if the ball, I need to know when the ball hits the paddle. I mean, obviously Box2D figures it out, but right now it's just kind of bouncing it, like using the law of reflection or whatever. I would like it if it hits the middle of the paddle to bounce straight up, and if it hits the sides to bounce to the left or to the right. So we'll work on that as well soon. I don't want this video to be too long. And we'll add our own brick class, which is a lot easier than the paddle class. It is still just a rectangle shape, and the ball's going to hit them and delete them and stuff, and we'll have to make a whole vector of them, so we'll worry about that this week later on, okay? So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. We'll talk soon.